Stephen, you haven't won the war yet,
Yes.
but you certainly won a big battle.
Yeah, in these sort of campaigns, we've got to take every little victory as it comes, and we're surely celebrating the fact that Apple has walked away from this project. We congratulate Apple for walking away from this project. It's not a really good project for Apple to be involved in terms of the collateral damage to endangered species. And we'd like to we recommend that other companies do not follow the lead of Apple and pursue or get involved with the Upper Burdekin wind farm project. It's an inappropriately placed wind farm project in some very, very good, high biodiverse wilderness forests. And it's a place that was actually earmarked for national park acquisition because of its high biodiversity values. So we congratulate Apple. It was a good decision, and we'd actually like to see Twiggy Forrest now walk away from this project. It's a project that is going to bring about a lot of harm to his reputation and Squadron Energy if they do proceed. So we'd like to see Squadron Energy and Twiggy Forrest walk away from this project.
Well, you've done a brilliant job highlighting this with your wildlife photography and videography. We'll run some images now of Kaban Wind Farm. This is 145 kilometres from the Upper Burdekin proposal, but you can see the kind of landscape that it is. I mean, this is basically remnant native forest, I guess, is it, Stephen?
That's right, yeah. So it's all old growth forests on the western side of the Wet Tropics World Heritage Area. So it's high elevation forests, and these are the forests that have been spared industrialisation, agriculture, commercialisation, urbanisation because of its rugged terrain. So what's happening is these wind farm companies are targeting the remnant areas, the high altitude areas, the refugia areas of North Queensland, where there is a bit of a wind resource, even though that's a little bit debatable. And in doing so, diminishing those wilderness values of those high altitude areas. And those high altitude areas are the areas that we need for species to survive. They're the refugia areas. So they're the areas being targeted by big wind companies at the moment. The reason why they're getting a free kick into these otherwise protected areas under the Vegetation Management Act is that under the State Planning Code 23 for wind farms are actually exempt from the Vegetation Management Act and also the Nature Conservation Act. So the wind farm industry is the only industry in Queensland that is exempt from the Vegetation Management Act and the Nature Conservation Act. And this is why they have the ability to go into these areas and clear fell hundreds of hectares of forest that wouldn't normally be cleared under any other circumstance. So even if it was a coal mine or coal seam gas, they'd find it very hard to clear these types of forests in Queensland. But the wind farm industry have got a free kick. They're exempt from the Vegetation Management Act and the Nature Conservation Act. So that's why these projects are getting the go-ahead. They're being fast-tracked. In actual fact, the state government is quoted as saying that there's a streamlined process for the wind farm industry in Queensland, which is code for free-for-all. And I'd go as far as to say this is a bit of a cowboy industry. It isn't regulated. There is no compliance. We've had residents now complaining against the Kaban wind farm in terms of noise and water sediment runoff into the local creeks. And no one is responsible for the damage wrought by that project. There's just the state government flicks it over to the federal government. The federal government say it's not their responsibility. It's the local council. The council says it's not their responsibility. So there's actually no compliance or regulations in place at all for the wind industry in Queensland.